What is going on, IF Warriors? It's your boy Edward V, and today we're going to do something special. We're going to talk about the news that just hit involving Jack Dorsey, the Twitter CEO, in which he talks about his intermittent fasting regimen. He does a 3-hour eating window with a 21-hour fasting window, but on Fridays he commences a fast that he doesn't end until Sunday evening. So essentially doing about a 48-hour fast. And the reason that I want to go ahead and talk about this topic is because Twitter went crazy when he did this. It was so polarizing in terms of people thinking that he was being unhealthy, or people just thinking that he had like some sort of an eating disorder. And you can see all these tweets that keep reiterating that what he's doing isn't a healthy thing. Tweets like the Rolling Stone, for example. And I feel like there needs to be some air cleared for those who are searching via YouTube in regards to Jack Dorsey's intermittent fasting protocol and if it's safe or not. One thing that I can say is that intermittent fasting has definitely grown in popularity. But as you can tell by a lot of these tweets and by a lot of people's beliefs, it's still not fully understood, and there is still a stigmatization when connected to intermittent fasting. People are still looking at it as starvation, even though it's clearly not starvation. You are not starving simply because you haven't eaten for 20 hours. Now, if you fast for multiple days consecutive without taking in any nutrition like vitamins and minerals and stuff like that, then you're malnourished, but you're not starving. Starving requires your body to be at 0% body fat, and your body is now tapping into muscles and organs to keep you alive. At that point, you are starving and you're near death. But that is not the case for Jack Dorsey, nor is it the case for most people that want to implement an intermittent fasting protocol. So no, he is not starving. And yes, he can get his vitamins and minerals during his eating period, and a lot of vitamins and minerals you can consume during your fasted period because they don't contain any calories and you will still remain in a fasted state. So just because you're not eating doesn't mean you can't get your nutrition. Not to mention, you can stay hydrated by drinking water. You'll still be in a fasted state. So for any of those tweets that are referring to Jack Dorsey being malnourished, they are heavily misinformed and should look more into the research. Now let's take a look at the intermittent fasting approach that Jack Dorsey takes and why he utilizes it for physical and mental benefits. A lot of people are touting that he's just a billionaire hippie talking about focus and mental clarity and all of these different hippie things that have never been proven, but that is not the case at all. There are multiple studies, and I'll link the study below, done in 2014, published in the Journal of Cerebral Blood Flow and Metabolism, in which they utilize a 16-8 system, so it's 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating, and they showed that there were higher levels of neurogenesis during the fasted state. Neurogenesis is the brain's production of more brain cells, and neurogenesis has been linked to improving mood, performance, memory, and focus. So yes, it's anecdotal what Jack Dorsey is feeling, and it's not to say that other people will feel the same way that he does, but it isn't far-fetched to take what he's saying on face value because there are studies to back what he is saying. And then there's people that are saying, well, forget the vitamins and forget the focus. It's just not healthy for your body. A study review done in 2018 where they reviewed multiple studies, put them together to look at the health biomarkers of the participants, actually showed that intermittent fasting can protect against metabolic syndrome and other related diseases such as cardiovascular disease, which is the disease of the heart, and is also included in helping prevent diabetes. And that's just in humans, but animal studies have gone even further. Animal studies have shown that intermittent fasting can reduce neurological disorders, things like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and even stroke. And I'll link the study down below, but in terms of it being unhealthy to do, these studies are proving that that is not the case. And not only is it not the case, but it is the opposite effect. Intermittent fasting has a lot of health indicators that prove that the protocol is very beneficial. Now, one thing that a lot of people might say is that there's a reduction in the metabolism. That metabolism goes down because you're not eating. That is not the case. The metabolism is not directly connected to you eating all the time. It's more connected to your suppression of calories. So if you wanted to maintain the weight that you have right now and you did 4 hours of eating and 20 hours of fasting, you would not reduce your metabolism metabolism at all. And one interesting note is that intermittent fasting has been shown to retain muscle better than just caloric restriction. So if person A and person B were reducing calories at the same level, but person A was doing intermittent fasting and person B was just doing the caloric restriction, person A has a higher chance of retaining muscle. And if you didn't know, the primary driver for your metabolic rate, what actually pushes your metabolic rate in the energy expenditure, is muscle tissue and muscle to fat ratio. So if you're at a caloric restriction and you're losing body fat but retaining more muscle, then you have a better chance of having a better metabolic rate than that of someone who is just doing caloric restriction. So the contrary is actually true. You can improve your metabolism or protect your metabolic rate when utilizing intermittent fasting, contrary to popular belief. And there were 16 clinical trials done where they looked at intermittent fasting, the 16-8 method, and muscle retention was higher in the intermittent fasting group than the caloric restriction group. There are also other studies that looked at 1 meal a day and muscle retention was higher in that group as well. And I'll go ahead and link those studies down below for you to take a look at. The truth is that if you look into the studies, you'll be very hard pressed to find anything that says intermittent fasting is actually unhealthy when all the studies show that intermittent fasting is healthy to use. And even the naysayers of intermittent fasting like to say that intermittent fasting and caloric restriction is the same thing. You can choose either or, none is superior than the other. They like to point at a study that they claim is the biggest meta-analysis of 40 different studies looking at intermittent fasting versus caloric restriction. But in reality, there is a Ramadan study of 70 different publications that looks at intermittent fasting versus caloric restriction that shows that there is a fat loss and muscle retention benefit when utilizing the intermittent fasting protocol. But my point is that even the naysayers that actually look into the research know that intermittent fasting in and of itself is not unhealthy. So I just wanted to clear the air because I saw that Twitter basically imploded when Jack Dorsey stated that he does intermittent fasting. People just saying that he has an unhealthy relationship with food, he has an eating disorder. I'm wondering how many of those people would say he has an eating disorder if he was to say that he ate 6 meals a day with snacks in between. I'm pretty positive that they wouldn't be saying that he has an overeating disorder. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I want to thank my patrons for my Patreon, and I'm going to go ahead and put their names right up here. And of course, as always guys, I'll see you on Wednesday for another FAQ. Peace.